Hello again, I'm Ian Masters, and this is the Daily Briefing, and I'm speaking with Robert Young Pelton, who is an author, filmmaker, explorer, and journalist. His book, License to Kill, Hired Guns in the War on Terror, is described as a look into an even darker side of the War on Terror, the mercenary military contractors who make up the coalition of the billing. Pelton has had first-hand experience in the War on Terror from direct contact with the world's most infamous jihadi, rebel, and insurgent groups. He has been advising the top U.S. command in Afghanistan since August of 2008, and now you're on the front page of today's New York Times. Robert, let's just go back a little bit. You and Eason Jordan, the former head of CNN, formed a website to cover the Iraq war, right? IraqSlugger.com?
Yeah, the quick genesis of the idea was that Eason and I were concerned about people not being able to get real information, nonpartisan information, from the ground in an area that had conflict. So we started hiring normal people, just housewives, professors, students, whatever, to let us know what was going on in their village, town, or whatever. And that became Iraq Slugger, and that was a subscription site where you could sign up and pay, or the military could sign up and pay. But what we found is the military can't buy one subscription. They can only buy 15,000 or 12,000. And that same goes for large organizations like the State Department. So we read a number of articles where the people in Afghanistan were saying, we have no idea what's going on, et cetera, et cetera. So we reversed the subscription model, which means let's go to the largest single client and say, how many subscriptions do you want? And let's build something for that, and then go to the UN and then the State Department and the New York Times or whatever. So that's essentially what we pitched. And it's something you can see online now, and people who Google me or Eason Jordan, we're not very secretive. People know what we've been doing. So
you're talking about AfPax?
Well, yeah, the new project was called AfPax.com, AFPAX, which was a play on words for peace and agreement, But we covered Pakistan and Afghanistan, and folks can see on the website what we actually delivered, which is pretty stunning. We provided, interviews with Taliban leadership in which we inserted questions from the commanders on the ground, essentially creating a dialogue between the Taliban and the U.S. military. We provided transcripts for, these radio mullahs and, details of the squabbling going on inside the Taliban leadership, et cetera, et cetera. So it's all good stuff.
So where did it go wrong?
Well, we were the flavor of the month, of course, because we met within that meeting. General McKernan said, can you start work today?
Now, General McKernan is a former commander, now the current ambassador to Afghanistan.
Correct. And then now we then began working, but we never actually were contracted. Then one of the fellows in the meeting, his name was Michael Furlong from Stratcom, assured everyone that he could get this funded and we'd be on our way. Well, if you remember the chronology, they changed command in the summer or spring of 2009. And about that time, the new crew came in, and I think Mike Furlong wrongly assumed that because these guys were former JSOC, or essentially special operations men known for targeting, the Zakawi network or whatever, that they would be more interested in targeting information, which we absolutely do not do or endorse. So he brought on some guys, which I thought were fairly toxic if you look at the resumes, people like Dewey Claridge, who was involved in Iran-Contra, the Yellow Cake Niger later, onwards and upwards. And we began to protest to Mike Furlong. But since we had no visibility on the contract or the actual mechanics of it, we were just told to just shut up and don't worry. And we essentially torpedoed our own contract in September of that year. And it just now hit the news because the CIA leaked a memo to the New York Times written by the station chief to the Assistant Secretary of Defense detailing what they thought Mike Furlong was up to. So that's the short history.
But not only did he torpedo this effort to have open source information that could have helped the military understand Afghanistan, not so much the enemy, but the country and the people, because they recognize that most of their job is hearts and minds, at least as far as I know. It sounds as if Furlong also pocketed a lot of money, or at least diverted a lot of money.
Well, I don't know, and I wouldn't accuse him of anything. I think it's important when the New York Times writes a story and they label me as a contractor and somehow I look like I'm running around shooting people, you have to stop and check your facts. There's nothing factually wrong with the New York Times story, but it is designed to be sort of a net to cast out to see if anybody can come back with more information. I know exactly what Mike Furlong did, and I know some of the things that he was involved in. I don't say that Mike Furlong was a bad person for trying to kill terrorists. I really have no problem with that. I just didn't want him to use our contract vehicle to do that with. And keep in mind, we were the white hat guys. We were actually, if you wanted to meet a member of the Taliban, we would go do that on your behalf or introduce you in a meeting. And one of our strengths was that we were able to sit at the general level, set up a meeting in a restaurant with Taliban commanders inside Kabul, and they can discuss whatever they wanted to discuss, and no one would be the wiser. So we were a fairly interesting asset that the military used.
And they weren't shadowing you, using you as a lure to get to these people?
No, what happened is that we freaked them out because we were able to operate on both sides of the border, in Pakistan, Afghanistan, also in Somalia and Yemen. And the CIA operates in Pakistan, and the DoD can't, and they're fairly ineffective inside Afghanistan. So we embarrassed the agency, as we were told. I've never met anybody from the agency inside Afghanistan, but we were told a number of times that our reports embarrassed the agency because, let's say after a civilian casualty where 100 people get killed, we actually had people on the ground within minutes getting the names of the people who own the houses and counting the bodies and whatever. And this information was used to keep the commander aware, and it led to a number of decisions being made. But the point is, we work towards peace. We work towards lowering the confusion and the violence. We do not endorse dropping bombs on people or shooting people or whatever, because we know we're leaving Afghanistan, so it's not our goal to create more death.
And were you aware in any way that, first of all, you've operated for years and years in war zones, and as far as I know, you're the only person that ever came out of the Colombian jungle alive after having been captured, because normally you get hell forever. Right. And my understanding is the reason that, and you're the guy that also found the American Taliban early in the Afghan war when the U.S. first got involved after 9/11. Right. So you've had unusual mobility and, even meeting with the Al-Qaeda people. So if now that the word is out, you're dead meat, aren't you? I mean, haven't they?
No, I don't think so, because I don't spy. I mean, just like I'm talking to you now on the phone, I don't hide. I don't pretend to be one thing. And we constantly argued with Mike Furlong about his attitude towards gathering information. We simply said, look, if you keep killing the members of the Taliban, they're going to bring in wackier and crazier people to replace them, and then you have to start over from scratch. We had built relationships with the Taliban in which we could negotiate and do this sort of coin thing of carving off the most radical and leaving the Afghans to deal with the people who were intransigent. So our concept was actually totally in sync with what General McChrystal and General Flynn and General Rodriguez are doing right now. He was out of sync.
Right, and you were reporting to McChrystal and
correct,
and the top command.
We are a force for information. We don't say that Ian is sitting in this restaurant at this location at this time. That's intelligence gathering. What we can do is tell you, what's going on in a certain district. We can give you a dossier on somebody to understand, what he likes and doesn't like. We're no different than if you hired the New York Times to do a story and did it right.
So you only learned, Robert Young Pelton, that you guys were being used, and this information that was meant to inform the U.S. command and educate them about the Afghan people and who they could talk to get out of this mess.
You have to understand, Furlong firewalled us off from a lot of what he was doing, but then he would also brag to us about his, what he called the Willies, Willie 1, 2, and 3, and the Jason Bournes. And we continually cautioned him, both in writing and also verbally, that he was definitely going down the wrong path, and this was going to blow up in his face.